Marcus Cole had been alone for 3 years now, and he had learned to like it that way, or at least that was what he told himself every night when the silence of space pressed against the walls of his ship. The Vagrant Hope was not a pretty vessel, and Marcus knew this better than anyone. She was a patchwork collection of salvaged parts, stolen components, and desperate repairs held together by welding marks and stubborn hope. He had found her abandoned in a scrapyard on the edge of civilized space, and he had spent 2 years making her fly again. She was ugly, she was loud, and she rattled like a dying animal whenever he pushed her past half speed. But she was as the night the ship drifted through the outer reaches of the Korath Nebula, a place where empires did not bother to send patrols, and where laws meant nothing at all. Marcus sat in his pilot chair with a cup of cold coffee in his hand, watching the swirling purple gases of the nebula paint shadows across his cockpit windows. His scanners hummed quietly in the background, searching for debris, for wrecks, for anything he could strip down and sell at the next station. This was his life now, a salvager, a scavenger, a man who picked through the corpses of dead ships and sold what he found to whoever would pay it. It was not glamorous work, but it kept him fed, and it kept him flying, and that was enough. The scanner beeped suddenly, cutting through the silence like a knife, and Marcus leaned forward to study the readings with tired eyes. Something large was drifting about 200 kilometers ahead of ship. His instruments told him. Though the energy signature was weak and flickering, he adjusted his course and pushed the engines forward, feeling the familiar rattle shake through the floor beneath his feet. As he drew closer, the shape of the vessel emerged from the nebula's glow. A long, angular transport ship with black markings along its hull that made his stomach turn cold. He recognized those markings immediately. Every spacer in the outer regions knew them, and every decent person feared them. This was a slave transport, one of the vessels used by the cartels to move living cargo across the lawless sectors where no authority would intervene. Marcus should have turned away right then. He knew the smart thing was to change course and forget he had ever seen this ship. Getting involved with slaver business meant trouble, the kind of trouble that followed you across star systems and ended with your body floating in the void. But something made him hesitate. Something in the way the ship drifted, without power, without direction, like a corpse left to rot in the endless dark. His scanners picked up faint life signs inside the vessel, 5 of them, weak but present, clustered together in what appeared to be the cargo hold. Marcus cursed quietly under his breath and ran a hand through his messy hair, knowing already what he was going to do. Even as his mind screamed at him to fly away, he guided the Vagrant Hope alongside the transport and extended the docking clamps, feeling them lock into place with a heavy clunk that echoed through both ships. The airlock hissed open, and Marcus stepped into darkness with only a flashlight and a pistol at his side. The smell hit him first, stale air, recycled too many times, mixed with the sharp scent of fear and unwashed bodies. Emergency lights flickered red along the corridor walls, casting everything in a bloody glow that made shadows dance like living things. He moved carefully through the ship, checking corners and doorways, but he found no crew, no guards, no one at all. The bridge told him the story when he found it. The navigation logs showed that the reactor had begun to fail 3 days ago, and the crew had fled in the escape pods rather than risk death alongside their cargo. They had left their prisoners behind to die slowly as the life support systems failed one by one. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, hot and bitter, as he made his way down to the cargo hold. The door was locked, but his plasma cutter made short work of the mechanism, and when the metal slid open, his flashlight revealed what the slavers had abandoned. 5 containment pods stood in a row against the far wall, each one glowing with dim emergency power, each one holding a figure frozen in stasis. They were all young, all female, all from different species, that Marcus had never seen together in one place before. He approached the first pod and wiped the frost from its window, revealing a face that seemed almost human, except for the faint patterns of light that moved beneath her pale skin. Display panel showed her species as Volante. Her age is roughly equivalent to 19 human years, and her status is stable but declining. Marcus checked the other pods one by one, finding similar readings: 5 girls from 5 different worlds, all taken from their homes, all scheduled for sale at some black market auction. The power levels on the pod showed less than 6 hours of reserve energy remaining. After that, the stasis fields would fail, and the girls would wake up in a dead ship with no air and no heat. He stood there in the red darkness for a long moment, weighing his options like coins on a scale. He could take what salvage he could carry and leave. It would be the safe choice, the smart choice, the choice that kept him alive in a galaxy that did not reward kindness. Or he could do something stupid, something dangerous, something that every survival instinct he had developed over 3 years of lonely salvaging screamed at him not to do. Marcus thought about who he used to be back before the war, back before he had lost everything that mattered and run away to the stars to hide from his own grief. He thought about the man his mother had raised him to be, and he thought about what she would say if she could see him now. Standing in the dark with 5 lives hanging in the balance, he made his decision one by one. He disconnected the pods from the dying ship and loaded them onto the Vagrant Hope, his muscles straining with the weight, his breath coming hard in the thin air when the last pod was secured in his cargo bay. He sealed the airlock and stumbled back to the cockpit, punching in a course for the nearest free station. Behind him, 5 strangers slept in frozen silence, unaware that their lives had just changed forever, and so had his. The Vagrant Hope turned away from the dead slaver ship and disappeared into the purple glow of the nebula, carrying its new cargo toward an uncertain future. Marcus did not know what he was going to do with 5 rescued slaves, but he knew one thing for certain: he was not going to let them die. Not today, not ever, not while he still had breath in his lungs and a ship beneath his feet. The stars stretched out before him like scattered diamonds, cold and indifferent. But for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Cole did not feel quite so alone. The first one woke screaming. Marcus had prepared himself for many things: confusion, fear, maybe even violence. But the sound that tore from the Volante girl's throat when her pod hissed open was something else entirely. A raw and broken cry that spoke of nightmares he could not imagine. He stepped back and raised his hands slowly, showing her that they were empty, showing her that he meant no harm. "Easy," he said in a soft voice, the way one might speak to a frightened animal. "You are safe now. I promise you are safe." The girl's eyes were wide and wild, darting around the unfamiliar cargo bay with the desperate energy of a trapped creature seeking escape. Her skin flickered with pale light, patterns of blue and silver racing across her face and arms like lightning trapped beneath glass. Her fear made visible in the most literal way possible. "Where am I?" she demanded in accented common, her voice hoarse from months of disuse. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" "My name is Marcus," he answered calmly, keeping his distance, keeping his movements slow and predictable. "I found you on a slave transport that was drifting dead in the Korath Nebula. The crew abandoned the ship and left you to die. So I brought you here to my vessel." She stared at him with suspicion burning in her pale eyes, and he could not blame her for it. Trust was not something that came easily to those who had been taken, sold, and treated as cargo. "You are human," she said finally, and there was something in her tone that he could not quite read. "I have heard stories about humans, good ones." "I hope," Marcus replied with a tired smile. "Some good," she admitted, "and some very bad." "Well, I'm hoping to be one of the good ones today. There is water and food in the galley if you are hungry, and I have blankets if you are cold." She did not move from where she stood pressed against the wall. But the frantic flickering of her skin began to slow just slightly. "What is your name?" Marcus asked gently. She hesitated for a long moment before answering, as if giving her name was giving away something precious. "Lyra," she said at last. "My name is Lyra. It is nice to meet you." "Lyra, I wish it were under better circumstances." The second pod opened an hour later, and this time Marcus was ready for the reaction. The girl inside was different from Lyra in almost every way. She was tall and powerfully built, with gray skin and ridges of bone that ran along her skull like a natural helmet. Her species was Grethan, according to the pod's records, a warrior people known throughout the galaxy for their strength and their pride. But when her eyes opened and she saw Marcus standing before her, there was no fight in them, only exhaustion, only defeat. Only the hollow look of someone who had lost everything and expected nothing. "Another cell," she muttered in a voice like gravel. "Another master." "No cells here," Marcus told her quietly. "And no masters either, just a salvager with a ship and some extra blankets." She looked at him with confusion, and then she looked at Lyra, who stood watching from the doorway with her arms wrapped around herself. "He speaks the truth," Lyra said hesitantly. "I think he speaks the truth." The warrior girl climbed slowly out of her pod, her legs unsteady beneath her after so long in stasis. And Marcus caught her arm when she stumbled. She flinched at his touch, and he let go immediately. "Sorry," he said. "I did not mean to startle you." She studied him with sharp eyes the color of molten copper. "Searching for the trick, searching for the trap. I am Kira," she said finally. "And if you are lying to me, I will kill you, even weak as I am now. I will find a way." "Fair enough," Marcus agreed. "But I am not lying." The third girl was the one who worried him most. She was small and fragile looking, with skin like moonlight and hair that seemed to float around her head like she was underwater Rilwary. The record said, an empathic species that could feel the emotions of others as clearly as physical sensations when she woke. She did not scream, and she did not threaten. She simply curled into a ball in the corner of her pod and began to cry without making any sound. Marcus approached her slowly and knelt down beside the pod, staying low so he would not seem threatening. "Hey," he said softly. "It is okay. You are going to be okay." She looked up at him with eyes that seemed too large for her face, and he saw something shift in her expression. She was feeling him, he realized, sensing his emotions the way he might sense heat or cold. "You are sad," she whispered. "So sad. Underneath everything, you are so very sad." The words hit him like a punch to the chest, but he forced himself to smile anyway. "Maybe so," he admitted. "But right now I am more worried about you. Can you tell me your name?" "Senna," she breathed. "I am Senna. I can feel them all. I could feel them all on that ship. All the pain and fear and despair. It was so loud. So loud. That ship is gone now," Marcus told her firmly. "And you are here with me. And I am going to do everything I can to keep you safe." She reached out with trembling fingers and touched his hand, and he felt a strange warmth spread through his skin. Her gift, he supposed. Her way of connecting. "You mean it," she said with wonder in her voice. "You actually mean it." The fourth girl had 4 arms. Marcus had seen stranger things in his years of salvaging, but there was something almost hypnotic about watching her move as she climbed out of her pod, each limb working independently while somehow remaining perfectly coordinate. Tethri, her records read, a species known for their mechanical genius and their nimble fingers perfect for delicate technical work, which was probably why someone had thought she would be valuable. Her name was Zaya, and she was younger than the others, barely more than a child by human standards. "Your ship is making a strange noise," she said before Marcus could even introduce himself. "Something in the engine manifold is loose. I can hear it rattling from here." "She has been making that noise for 2 years. Marcus admitted with a surprised laugh. I thought it was just part of her personality. No. It is a mechanical fault. I can fix it if you have the right tools. Marcus looked at this small alien girl with her 4 busy hands and her sharp, clever eyes. And he felt something loosen in his chest. We can talk about that later, he said gently. For now, why don't you get something to eat? The 5th pod was different from the others when it opened. The girl inside did not speak. She could not speak, Marcus realized. As he watched her communicate with the others through gestures and expressions alone, she was Aravian, a winged species from a world of floating islands and endless skies. But her wings hung crooked and damaged behind her back, bent at angles that made him wince just to look at them. Her name was Nira. Though he only learned this because Lyra somehow understood her silent language and translated for him. Nira watched Marcus with dark eyes that seemed to see straight through him. And when he offered her a blanket, she took it with hands that trembled only slightly. He looked at them all, 5 alien girls from 5 different worlds, standing in his cramped cargo bay with fear and hope and confusion written across their faces. I know you have no reason to trust me, he said quietly. And I know you have been through things I cannot imagine, but I want you to know that I am not going to hurt you, and I am not going to sell you, and I am going to do everything I can to get you somewhere safe. They stared at him in silence, and Senna reached out to touch each of her companions in turn, sharing with them what she felt in his heart. He is telling the truth, she confirmed softly. I do not understand why, but he is telling the truth. Marcus did not understand why either. He only knew that he could not have done anything else. 3 days passed in fragile peace. Aboard the Vagrant Hope, Marcus gave the girls his own cabin and slept in the pilot's seat, waking every few hours to check the scanners and make sure they were still alone in the vast emptiness of space. Slowly, carefully, like animals learning that the hand reaching toward them would not strike. The 5 aliens began to emerge from their shells. Lyra spent hours in the small galley, learning to use human cooking equipment and producing meals that were surprisingly edible despite the limited supplies. Kira exercised obsessively in the cargo bay, pushing her weakened body through routines that made Marcus tired just watching her. She was rebuilding herself, he realized, piece by piece. Preparing for a fight she expected to come. Zaya had somehow gotten into the engine room without permission and had already fixed 3 problems that Marcus had not even known existed. The ship ran quieter now, smoother, and he could not find it in himself to be angry about the intrusion. Senna stayed close to the others, always touching, always feeling, creating connections that seemed to give her strength, even as she gave comfort in return. Nira simply watched everything with her dark, silent eyes, seeing things that the others missed, communicating in glances and gestures that Marcus was slowly beginning to understand. It was almost peaceful, almost like something he might have called family if he let himself think about it that way. But peace never lasted long in the outer regions, and Marcus should have known better than to hope otherwise. The alarm screamed through the ship on the morning of the 4th day, dragging Marcus from a restless sleep with adrenaline already flooding his veins. He scrambled to the cockpit and stared at the sensor display with a cold knot forming in his stomach. A ship was approaching fast, far too fast, and its signature was one he recognized with sickening certainty. The Crimson Fang was a warship that had terrorized these sectors for nearly a decade. A massive vessel bristling with weapons and crewed by the most ruthless slavers in known spacesets. Captain was a Skeelith warlord named Vorith, a creature of legend and nightmare who had built his empire on blood and chains, and somehow, impossibly, he had found them. How? Marcus whispered to himself as he ran calculations through the navigation computer. How did they find us? The answer came from Zaya, who appeared at his shoulder with fear written across her young face. There was a beacon, she said in a voice tight with guilt. hidden in the transport ship's hull. I found the signal yesterday, but I did not realize what it meant until now. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Marcus wanted to curse, wanted to scream, wanted to do 100 useless things that would not help anyone. Instead, he forced himself to breathe and think. It is not your fault, he told her firmly. You could not have known. Now go get the others and bring them here. The communication panel crackled to life before he could say anything else. And a face appeared on the screen that made his blood run cold. Vareth was massive, even by Skeelith standards. His scaled skin the color of dry blood. His eyes yellow and split by vertical pupils that seemed to look through Marcus rather than at him. Human, the warlord spoke in a voice like stones grinding together. You have something that belongs to me. Marcus felt the girls gather behind him in the cockpit doorway. Felt their fear like a physical weight pressing against his back. I do not see any property here, he replied, keeping his voice steady through sheer force of will. Just people, free people who do not want to go with you, Vareth laughed. A horrible sound like breaking bones. You are either very brave or very stupid. Little salvager, I have your ship's signature now. I know what you are flying. And I know that you cannot outrun me or outfight me. And what do you want? I am a reasonable being, Vareth said with a smile that showed far too many teeth. Return my cargo undamaged, and I will let you go with a finder's fee. Refuse me, and I will take them anyway. But only after I have made you watch things that will haunt whatever remains of your mind until I finally allow you to die. Marcus felt Senna's hand grip his arm. Felt the terror flowing through her empathic touch. Felt the desperate silent plea for him to save them. To not give them back to the monster on the screen. He thought about his ship, about his life, about all the logical reasons he should accept the offer and walk away. And then he thought about his mother, about the words she had spoken to him when he was young, and the galaxy had seemed like a place of wonder rather than cruelty. Some things matter more than survival, she had told him. Some things are worth dying for, and if you forget that, then you have already lost everything worth living for. Marcus reached out and cut the transmission. What are you doing? Lyra gasped behind him. Something stupid, he admitted as he grabbed the controls and pushed the engines to full power. Hold on to something. The vagrant Hope lurched forward with a roar of straining machinery, diving toward the nearby asteroid field with the Crimson. Fang, already turning to pursue weapons fire, streaked past the cockpit windows, painting the darkness with lines of deadly light. And Marcus threw the ship into a spin that made his stomach flip inside his chest. Knew these asteroids he had salvaged in this region for years, learning every hiding spot, every narrow passage. Every trick the rocks could offer. The Crimson Fang was bigger, faster, and more powerful, but it was also bulky. And Vareth did not know this place the way Marcus did. They wove through tumbling mountains of stone and ice, scraping past surfaces close enough to touch, dodging fire that exploded against asteroids behind them and sent debris spinning in all directions. The nebula. Zaya shouted over the noise, her four hands flying across a console she had somehow rewired to show tactical data. There is a dense pocket of ionized gas ahead. It will blind their sensors if we can reach it. I know, Marcus replied through gritted teeth. That is where we are going. A blast caught them on the port side, shaking the ship so hard that Marcus heard something crack in the walls. They were taking damage. They could not survive many more hits like that, but the nebula was close now. So close he could see the purple glow filling the cockpit. Windows like a curtain of colored smoke. He pushed the engines past their limits, felt the ship scream around him, and then they were inside, wrapped in swirling gases that turned the universe into a blinding haze of light and shadow behind them. The Crimson Fang hesitated at the nebula's edge. Even Vareth was not crazy enough to chase blind through terrain that could hide 1,000 dangers. Marcus let out a breath he had not realized he was holding and slumped back in his seat. "Are we safe?" Kira asked from behind him, her warrior's instincts clearly telling her otherwise. "For now," Marcus admitted. "But they will not give up. Vorith is patient, and he will wait for us to come out. Then what do we do?" Marcus looked at the 5 faces watching him with desperate hope. Looked at the girls who had placed their lives in his hands simply because he was the only option they had. "I do not know yet," he said honestly. "But I will figure something out, I promise you." "I'm not going to let them take you back." Senna touched his arm again. And this time, what flowed through her gift was not fear, but something warmer. Something he had almost forgotten how to recognize. It was trust, pure and simple. Given freely by someone who had every reason never to trust anyone again. Marcus looked away before she could see the tears forming in his eyes. The vagrant Hope drifted toward a barren moon at the edge of the nebula, her engines coughing and dying. As the damage from the chase finally caught up with her, Marcus stood in the engine room with Zaya, watching the young mechanic work with all 4 of her hands while she explained in rapid words just how bad things had become. "The reactor is failing," she said without looking up from the tangle of wires she was wrestling with. "I can keep life support running for maybe 12 more hours, but the engines are gone. We are not flying anywhere." Marcus nodded slowly, a plan forming in his mind that he hated even as he accepted its necessity. "There is an emergency shuttle in the cargo bay," he said quietly. "I have been saving it for parts, but it still works. It is small, but you could all fit inside." Zaya stopped working and looked up at him with confusion in her bright eyes. "What about you?" "Someone needs to stay behind," Marcus explained. "When Vorith comes, and he will come, he will see a crippled ship with a single life sign on board and assume the rest of you died in the chase. I will keep him busy while you slip away in the shuttle. Use the moon's gravity well to mask your escape vector." "That is suicide," Zaya said flatly. "Maybe," Marcus admitted, "but it gives you a chance that is more than you had before." He left her in the engine room and went to gather the others, finding them huddled together in the galley like a family waiting for bad news, because that was what they were now. He realized a family, strange and broken and thrown together by circumstance, but a family nonetheless. He explained his plan in simple words. Watching their faces as understanding and then horror dawned in their eyes. "No," Kira said immediately, her voice hard as iron. "I will not run while you die for us." "It is not about running," Marcus replied gently. "It is about surviving. You have been through too much to end like this. All of you have. And if my life can buy you a future, then that is a trade I am willing to make." "Why?" Lyra demanded, her skin flickering with agitated light. "Why would you do this for strangers? For people you do not even know?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, searching for words that could explain something he barely understood himself. "Because someone should," he said finally. "Because no one else will. Because when I found you on that ship, I had a choice between walking away and doing the right thing. And I chose to do the right thing, and now I have to keep choosing it, even when it costs me everything." Senna crossed the room and took his hand, and through her touch, he felt them all felt their fear and their grief and their desperate love for the man who had shown them that kindness still existed in a cruel galaxy. "We do not want you to die," she whispered. "I know," Marcus said softly, "but some things matter more than what we want." He turned away before they could see his own fear and went to prepare for what was coming. The Crimson Fang appeared 3 hours later, emerging from the nebula like a predator finally closing in on wounded prey. Marcus watched it approach from his cockpit, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip, his heart beating steady and slow despite the terror that lurked beneath his calm surface. Had said goodbye to the girls and sealed them in the shuttle. They had cried. Even Kira, and Nira had hugged him so tightly that he could still feel the ghost of her arms around his chest. Now he stood alone, the way he had been alone for 3 years, waiting for death to come and claim him, the Crimson. Fang sent a boarding party rather than simply destroying the ship. Vorath wanted his cargo back alive, which meant he needed to search for survivors. Marcus heard the airlock cycle open and gripped his pistol tighter. He would take as many of them with him as he could. He told himself he would make them bleed for every step they took toward the shuttle bay. He would buy those girls every second he could manage before the end. The first slavers came through the door in a rush of armored bodies and raised weapons, and Marcus fired from behind a crate, dropping 2 of them before they even knew where he was. Plasma bolts scorched the air around him as he dove for cover. Rolled came up shooting again. He was one man against a small army, and he knew he could not win. But winning had never been the point. A shot caught him in the shoulder and spun him around, pain exploding through his body like fire. But he stayed on his feet somehow, kept moving, kept fighting. Enough. A voice boomed through the corridor, and Marcus looked up to see Vorath himself stepping through the airlock, his massive form filling the passage like a nightmare-given flesh. "You have courage, human," the warlord said with something that might have been respect. "I almost admire you, but courage does not stop plasma bolts, and it will not save you now." Marcus raised his pistol with his good arm, knowing he could not hurt the armored giant, but refusing to die without trying. And then he heard something behind him that made his heart stop. He is not alone. Marcus spun around to see Kira standing in the corridor behind him, a metal pipe clutched in her gray hands, her eyes burning with a fury that made even the slavers take a step back. Beside her stood Lyra, her skin blazing with light so bright it hurt to look at her directly. Zaya was there too, holding a device in her 4 hands that hummed with dangerous energy, an improvised explosive. Marcus realized, powerful enough to take out half the ship. Senna stood with them, trembling but defiant, and even Nira was there, a blade in her hands that she held with the practiced ease of someone who knew how to use it. "We told you to run," Marcus gasped. "We do not take orders from you," Kira replied with a fierce smile. "You gave us a choice, the first real choice any of us has had since we were taken, and we choose to stand. You saved us," Lyra added. "We will not let you die alone," Vorath laughed, a sound of genuine amusement. 5 broken slaves and a wounded human against the Crimson. "Fang, this will be entertaining at least." Kira moved first, faster than her weakened state should have allowed, her pipe crashing against the first slaver with bone-shattering force. Saya threw her explosive into the crowd of reinforcements trying to push through the airlock, and the blast sent bodies flying in all directions. Lyra's light flared even brighter, blinding enemies who screamed and fired wildly at nothing while Nira moved through them like a silent shadow, her blade finding every gap in their armor. Senna pressed herself against Marcus and poured strength into him through her touch, not healing exactly, but enough to push back the pain and keep him on his feet. They fought like people who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove, like victims who had finally decided to stop being victims, and the slavers, who had expected easy prey, found instead something they had never prepared for, people who would rather die fighting than live in chains. Vorath waded into the battle himself, massive fists swinging at Kira, who dodged and struck and dodged again, keeping the warlord's attention while the others dealt with his crew. Marcus saw the opening and took it. He threw himself at Vorath from behind, driving his blade between the armor plates at the giant's neck. Vorath roared with pain and rage, spinning to grab Marcus with hands that could crush stone. But Kira was there, slamming her pipe into the warlord's knee with every ounce of strength she had. The giant fell, and then they were on him together, all of them, striking and cutting and refusing to stop until the monster finally stopped moving. When it was over, Marcus stood in a corridor filled with bodies and smoke, surrounded by 5 alien girls who were covered in blood and burns and bruises. But still somehow standing, the surviving slavers fled back to their ship, and the Crimson Fang retreated into the void. Its crew broken and its captain dead. That was incredibly stupid, Marcus said finally, his voice rough with exhaustion. Learn from the best, Kira replied. And despite everything, they all laughed at the desperate, relieved laughter of people who had expected to die, and somehow had not. Marcus looked at them. These 5 girls who had become so much more than passengers, and felt something warm crack open in his chest. For the first time in 3 years, he did not feel alone. The Vagrant Hope limped into Freeport Station 3 days later. Held together by emergency repairs and stubborn determination, Zaya had worked miracles with the damaged engines, coaxing life back into systems that should have been beyond saving. And Marcus had guided them through the void with a skill born from years of navigating the dangerous outer regions. They docked at the station's repair yard, and within hours word had spread of what they had done. A lone human salvager and 5 rescued slaves had killed Captain Vorath and broken. The crew of the Crimson Fang Station authorities arrived first, followed by representatives from the Galactic Humanitarian Council, followed by journalists who wanted to capture the story of the year. Marcus answered their questions as briefly as possible, deflecting attention whenever he could, uncomfortable with being called a hero when he had simply done what seemed right. The girls were examined by doctors and declared healthy despite their ordeal. And then the offers began to arrive: relocation assistance to any planet they chose, free passage home to whatever remained of their families, educational opportunities, job placements, everything they would need to rebuild the lives that had been stolen from them. Marcus watched them receive these offers from a distance, standing apart while aid workers explained all the wonderful futures that awaited them. He was happy for them. Truly he was. They deserved every good thing the galaxy could give them after what they had survived, but he would be lying if he said it did not hurt to know that he would soon be alone again on the 3rd day at the station. While the Vagrant Hope sat in the repair bay with workers crawling over her damaged hull, Marcus went to say goodbye. He found the girls gathered in a temporary housing unit, sitting together the way they always did now, touching and talking and existing as a single interconnected family. I wanted to let you know that the ship should be ready to fly in a couple of days, he said from the doorway. I will be heading back out to the salvage routes after that. I just wanted to thank you all before I go. They looked at him with expressions he could not quite read. Thank us, Lyra repeated slowly. Thank us for what? For reminding me what matters, Marcus said simply. For giving me a reason to be something more than just a man picking through wreckage. I had forgotten who I was supposed to be, and you helped me remember. Kira stood up and crossed the room to stand in front of him, her copper eyes studying his face with an intensity that made him want to look away. The aid workers have offered us many things, she said. Homes on peaceful worlds, new lives in safe places. Everything we thought we wanted when we dreamed of freedom. That is wonderful, Marcus said, forcing the words past the tightness in his throat. You deserve all of it. We turned them down. Marcus blinked in confusion. Why would you do that? Lyra joined Kira, her skin glowing with soft, warm light. We have been discussing it among ourselves, she explained. And we have realized something important. The lives we had before are gone, destroyed by what was done to us. And we cannot simply go back to being who we used to be. But you could start over, Marcus protested. You could build something new, something better. We could, Senna agreed, rising to take his hand with the gentle touch he had come to know so well. But we do not want to. We want to stay with you. With me. Why would you want that? Zaya bounced up from her seat with all the energy of youth, her 4 hands gesturing enthusiastically as she spoke. Your ship needs a proper mechanic, she pointed out. And I have already fixed most of the major problems. Also, your navigation computer is terribly outdated, and your weapon systems are a mess. And honestly, I'm amazed you have survived this long without someone competent looking after things. She is right, Kira added with a rare smile. You fight like a man with a death wish. You need someone watching your back who actually knows how to handle a battle. And you eat terrible food, Lyra said with mock seriousness. Nothing but preserved rations and protein bars. No wonder you are so thin. You need someone to cook proper meals before you waste away entirely. Senna squeezed his hand gently. We feel safe with you, she said softly. For the first time since we were taken. We feel like we belong somewhere. You gave us that, Marcus. And we do not want to lose it. Nira moved forward and did something she had never done before. She hugged him, wrapping her arms around his chest and pressing her face against his shoulder. Marcus stood frozen. Overwhelmed by emotions he had no idea how to process. I am just a salvager, he said finally, his voice rough. I live on a broken-down ship and pick through wreckage for a living. I cannot give you the life you deserve. You already gave us something better, Kira replied. You gave us ourselves back. You gave us the chance to choose. And we are choosing this. We are choosing you. Besides, Zaya added with a grin, salvaging sounds fun, and I bet we could find all sorts of interesting technology out there in the void. Marcus looked at them, at Lyra with her luminous skin, at Kira with her warrior strength, at Senna with her empathic gift, at Zaya with her clever hands, at Nira with her silent understanding. He thought about the years he had spent alone, convincing himself that isolation was better, that he did not need anyone, that caring about others only led to pain, and he realized that he had been wrong, that being alone had not protected him from anything. It had only made him smaller, hollower, less than what he was meant to be. The ship is cramped, he warned them, and the work is dangerous. And I cannot promise that things will be easy. We know, Lyra said with a smile that lit up her entire face. We do not want easy, we want family. But I guess I have a crew, Marcus said. And for the first time in years, he laughed a real laugh, full of joy and disbelief, and the first fragile stirrings of hope. The repairs took another week. And when the Vagrant Hope finally lifted off from Freeport Station, she was a different ship than the one that had arrived. Zaya had overhauled the engines until they purred like contented animals. Lyra had stocked the galley with real food and cooking supplies. Kira had organized the cargo bay into a proper training area. Senna had filled the living quarters with soft blankets and gentle colors. And Nira had somehow acquired a collection of plants that now grew in small pots throughout the vessel. Marcus sat in the pilot's seat with his new crew gathered around him, watching the station shrink in the rear display as they headed toward the unknown. Where are we going? Lyra asked. I have no idea, Marcus admitted. Any suggestions? Zaya pulled up a star chart and pointed to a region marked with salvage icons. There are reports of a massive wreck field in the Dalit system, she said excitedly. Pre-warships, lots of valuable technology. It could take months to go through it all. Sounds good to me, Kira agreed. Plenty of space to stretch my legs, and there is a colony on the way that is supposed to have an excellent market, Lyra added. I could stock up on proper spices. Senna leaned against Marcus's chair and smiled. Wherever we go, she said softly. We go together. Nira simply nodded and settled into the co-pilot's seat that she had claimed as her own. Her damaged wings folded carefully against her back as she watched the stars. Ahead, Marcus looked at them, all these 5 alien girls who had begged him to save them, who had then stood beside him when death came calling, who had chosen to stay with him when they could have had anything else in the galaxy. Together, he agreed, and punched in the coordinates for their new heading. The Vagrant Hope accelerated into the void. No longer a lonely vessel crewed by a man running from his past, but a home, a family, a second chance at life for 6 people who had all lost too much behind. Them lay suffering in chains in the long dark night of captivity. Ahead lay the endless black, full of danger and mystery and the promise of adventures yet to come. But for the first time in a very long time, Marcus Cole was not afraid of what waited in the darkness, because he was not facing it alone anymore, and somehow that made all the difference. The stars stretched out before them like scattered diamonds against velvet, cold and beautiful and infinite, and Marcus smiled as he watched them pass. This was not the life he had planned, not the future he had imagined when he first ran away to the stars all those years ago, but looking at the faces of his strange and wonderful crew, feeling the warmth of connection that he had denied himself for so long, he realized that this was better. This was home, and for Marcus Cole and his 5 alien daughters, home was wherever they happened to be as long as they were together.